Welcome to the Red Letters Podcast. In this podcast, we explore topics that can be life transforming while delivering a message of hope.
Hello and welcome to today's Red Letters Podcast. And today we are going to be talking about arguments. Are they healthy or toxic? I personally am going to withhold from saying what I think, but I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Ida because she wants to give us a definition.
Okay, Mary, thank you so much. Okay, the definition of argument, and this kind of astonished me, and I don't know why I didn't look it up a long time ago, but it means an oral disagreement, verbal opposition, discussion involving differing points of view, or a debate. The process of reasoning, series of reasons. So when thinking about arguments, I thought having an argument was basically when you're raising your voice, you're fighting, you're just heated back and forth.
I don't agree.
But after reading this, I'm thinking, man, it's just a simple debate. It's agreeing to disagree with the other person or just having a conversation of maybe something you disagree about.
Right.
So regarding being healthy or toxic, a conversation, a debate can be healthy or it can be toxic depending on the subject, I guess.
Right. And you know what, Ida? I'm glad that I always say that. I'm glad you said that because earlier we were talking about pride. And would you say that a person filled with pride, are they having a healthy argument?
No,
Because
because a person with pride, one, it's about you. It's not about the other person. You're not thinking about the other person. You already have your guard up.
Right.
You're already in defense and you're ready to oppose whatever they're going to come at you with, whether it's right or wrong, because you never want to be wrong. And you never, want to let anybody correct you. So I think, 100% pride can be unhealthy.
Yeah, and would make it a toxic
Make
argument.
it a toxic argument,
Yeah.
yes.
And I know, like the word arguments, we were kind of talking just a little bit before we started the podcast that it almost sounds like it's a negative, just the thought of having an argument. But that's why I think talking about whether it's healthy or toxic is important, because I think what determines whether it's healthy or not is the outcome of the argument,
Right.
and how you navigate through that. Because you could turn around and understand another person's point of view if you actually open your ears to try to listen, because sometimes we think we know what the other person is trying to say, but we kind of calculate that in our head and don't let them finish explaining it, where there could be another area that we could turn around and be learning from. And I think in a healthy setting, and even, there was a couple that I was talking to maybe in the last few weeks that were going through a situation where they were just having a hard time talking. And so I actually sent them this little thing that was called Rules for Fighting Fair. So it kind of helps set down some guidelines to make sure that you navigate the conversation in a healthy way so it's productive and not counterproductive, where it's causing damage and causing a bigger gap than before they started trying to talk. So I think that having, if especially in a marriage, if talking about certain topics are tough, because there's sometimes sensitive topics, that if you lay down the guidelines on how you're going to converse, and that, hey, there's not going to be any raising the voice. There's not going to be any foul language. And I know some of this stuff might sound like, what? Everybody knows that. Not really, because Christians, non-Christians sometimes will step into that because they have a point to prove. And almost like you guys were saying earlier, the pride kicks in where you're going to hear me and you're going to agree with me, whether you like it or not. Some people go into a conversation like that. And then that's those toxic ones that, slamming the doors, throwing something, and people get out of hand. And then you have a lot more damage to repair because you didn't try to go through a conversation where it was going to be productive.
And, obviously argument is another form of communication, and it's okay to set the stage. I would say take the argument out. I mean, it's a disagreement,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
So
A nicer
whenever,
way to say it.
yeah, a nicer way to say it. But I think words are so important because whenever you're talking to your significant other and you disagree with something and he or she raises up, you're going to start to argue with me. And it's like, no, I'm not going to argue. This is not an argument. This is a disagreement. I didn't agree with what you did or said earlier. But I think it's the way we phrase it. It brings a lot of weight to the conversation, and it's important because this way I love saying this, you disarm the other individual when you take those words out, because it does sound like, if you think it's aggression, like I'm gonna have this argument and I don't want to argue with you, but it's not that we're arguing, we're just having we're agreeing to disagree on something we don't see eye to eye on. And I just want to throw this out there, Tony and Ida, but we have these conversations, these topics, because people are asking, there's questions out there. Like for a mother to a child, my mom argues with me a lot. No, it's not an argument. But our hope in doing this and talking to individuals who are listening is that we would change that. We could change the way we say stuff, and we could, it's not an argument. It's we're having a communication, but we're both not agreeing or not seeing eye to eye. But that's really why we do this. It's for those couples, for if you're with your employer, you don't know how to talk to him and you believe that he's always arguing with you, then take a step back and maybe email and say, when will you talk to me? This is how I feel. And I share that because I was talking to my nephew, Sean, who also is part of the podcast, but he's not here today. Just calling him out.
Yeah.
I was having problems with my computer. I don't know how to use this Mac, I don't know how to use this Mac Pro. And I started getting a little heated, and he said, Tia, I hear that you are very angry right now, and this is not a conversation I want to have because it sounds like you're arguing with me. And I said, no. I said, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just stating the facts. And he said, Tia, I need you to breathe. And I'm like, where is this guy coming from? He said, I need you to breathe first of all. Give me the device. Let me look at it. But the way that he was talking, it calmed the whole situation. But he disarmed me. And then he said, this is not an argument. We're just, and the way he said it, but a lot of times it's the way we communicate. So we have to be aware of ourselves and how we take in what other people are saying to us. So I just think that's important.
Really good.
And the words that we choose to use.
Yeah, that's good.
One thing that I kind of came to this conclusion. I don't like put it in my forefront when I'm talking, but when I'm in the process of a conversation and I feel like I'm either not getting anywhere or I'm not explaining myself correctly, I actually look at it like let's just say I'm having a conversation with you, Mary. As I progress in the conversation, I actually feel like I'm trying to paint a picture at the same time.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Because I got to get you to see what I'm saying. So as I'm talking, I'm trying to paint the picture so you could see what I'm trying to say. So I have to change my vocabulary to try to paint that picture as accurate as possible so that you could see what I'm trying to say. So I think that's something that I've kind of put in the back of my mind. Like I said, sometimes in conversations, I actually I'm painting a picture with my words to get the other person to hear what I'm trying to say.
But what if sometimes, because I'm thinking about you saying that right now, because there are times when we sit down and I don't like when you paint the pictures.
Oh, okay.
I actually like it if you just get to the point.
Oh, okay.
Just say what you need to say, right? Because even with me, I tend to beat around the bush. And I'm better now because I've gotten to a place now where I just say what's on my mind or my heart. I don't make you guess what I'm feeling or thinking. I'll just tell you how I feel, know?
Okay,
and I'll tell you what I'm thinking and I'll tell you what's bothering me instead of, you trying to figure out what it is. And I think as women with even if especially if you're married, you tend to expect your husband to know everything you're feeling and everything
thinking.
you want and think, and where you don't have to say nothing, but just you should already know.
Yeah.
Why should I even tell you? We've been through this all the time, but really you haven't really specifically said what you want or desire or what you need. You expect everybody to read your mind, and that's not the way it works. So painting pictures could be good or bad.
I love it. Do I hear an argument?
Ding, ding. I actually still think I would still stand my ground, though, about painting the picture.
I agree with Mary with the words, though. If you choose
Yeah.
the right words and you just say specifically what you're wanting to say, but with the right words, where you're putting one's guard down, I think that's beautiful because I don't know. I think
Yeah.
the painting pictures takes a long time.
Well, the reason why I say that's because if you're actually trying to have a conversation and have a good, healthy talk, from what you're saying, it almost seems like there should be a time limit. Let's hurry up so we can get to the next task. And that, to me, you're not valuing the other person. You're saying, hey, it's cool that you want to spend a little portion of your life describing the situation, but just can you sum it up so we can move on? There's a little devaluing of the other person, I think, that happens when you're kind of putting your hand to the table. Hey, can you wrap it up now? That's the part where I think that that we should be careful with. Because if it's something where you're in a situation where you don't really have the time to talk, then maybe just pause the conversation. Mm-hmm. But to turn around and hey, tell me, and just be blunt about
Get to the
it.
point.
Yeah, that to me, it's like, okay, then I really don't want to engage in this conversation because you don't really want to hear. So that's why I kind of stand my ground that a conversation shouldn't necessarily have a time parameter to it, because it could be just an ongoing thing because you're growing in your relationship, and that's where the conversation comes in. So that's, I guess we could agree to disagree.
There you go. I love it. But in all fairness, I just want to throw this out there. For a couple.
Counsel us, Mary.
Yeah. For a couple, for marriages, and for when you have your child, when you're having these disagreements with your child, if you will, is it fair to say, for me, I get it if you just get to the point. Mm-hmm. In a conversation when it's a couple. For me, I've already lost you when you're trying to explain everything and going into detail. I get it, I appreciate it, but for me it works if you get to the point. So I think those conversations are conversations that should be had between either a mother and a child, the parents and the child, and significant others, like husband and wives. So I think those conversations would help the relationship grow, because now you know what she expects from me and I know how she expects. And it's not an argument. It's just that her attention span, I already lost her when I wanted to go into detail, as opposed to if I just told her, okay, you should have washed the dishes, go, keep moving. Something like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't turn into an argument. It just turned into, oh, okay, that's what he wanted. But that's a conversation to be had, because every individual is different. And some people I'm that type of person with my husband that I paint the picture. I'm like, look, because I think he needs the details. I'm like, I think he needs to know every little thing in order for him to get it. My husband is a type that will get off the car and say, I'm not listening to this anymore, and walk away from me. And that just like, oh my goodness. So we're gonna pick this up later, because I wasn't done with my thought. But my point is, those are conversations that should be have to agree to disagree. Mm-hmm. I don't like the fact that you want to go on forever because I got it when you said it. Or I needed more. I didn't understand what you were saying. It's not going to turn into an argument, but this is how communication happens. We let the other person know how we feel and how we perceive the information. Mm-hmm. I heard this, but that's not what I said. And that's where the conversation actually starts to take place. Mm. So that's just advice for those who are out there listening.
Yeah, and I guess I would clarify one thing that I guess when I was saying about the painting the picture part, I don't say that that's a license to be redundant. I don't say that that's a license to just be long-winded, mm-hmm. because you could kind of put that in that same category, and that's not really what I mean by painting a picture. I'm just, hey, if I'm pointing the light at this topic and you're not seeing it in this way, let me put the light on the backside and describe it that way. So mm-hmm. When I say paint a picture, I'm saying still be productive in the conversation, mm-hmm. but not be long-winded or redundant, just saying the same thing over and over.
Right. You're breaking it down to where the person can understand.
So there should be a progress.
I think, though, what you said as far as, if you're painting a picture, and how you say, maybe when you first start the conversation, I got it. Mm-hmm. I get it, And there's many times where he's painting the picture and I say, I got it, I get it, you know? But he still has to go on and finish the picture. And during that him finishing the picture, because I've already gotten it, I've cut him off. And I'm like, And then he'll even look at me like, you're not listening to me. Can you look at me when I'm talking? And I'm like, you know, I already got it. I get it. You're right, you know? But he still has to finish painting the picture. So I think that, no, I'm being honest, because it does happen like that, especially when couples, they talk, right? They talk. I think, and I figure sometimes there is times there's pride where I feel like maybe I just need to give him that, you know, that time and really engage, because that means a lot to him that I'm engaging and I'm letting him finish painting his picture.
Right.
This is Ida talking to Ida.
Yeah.
That part, I get it. I get it. You know, where I could step back and let you finish painting your picture.
Thank you.
Okay. And give you the benefit.
Yeah.
I love this episode.
No judgment. No judgment.
I got a witness.
No, because with him, you know, I noticed with him, he has to have that sometimes where he feels like he has to be able to paint these pictures or have these conversations
Or thoroughly
and
explain
feel
something
like-
so he understands that the other person also understood it. Okay.
Exactly.
I will say one thing too, is that a lot of men don't like to do that.
Yeah.
I've had to learn to do that because I see the fruit of doing that in a healthy way. It seems like the conversations are more fruitful.
Right.
It lasts longer. So it's not something that like I do it just because I'm used to it. I kind of had to learn how to do that because I know women are a lot more apt to hold a conversation more than a guy or a man, because that's why when a man comes home from work, how was your day? It was good. They're just,
that's it.
They're out of words for the day.
I think if you're married for a long time, your conversations on both sides end up like that. How was your day? Oh, good. Yours? Oh, fine.
What time do you go to work tomorrow?
Oh, 6.
Yeah.
And then actually, when you hit your antique years, you could just turn around and look at each other and know what's going on.
No, I love it. No arguments here.
Actually, since we all, I think, brought up the agree to disagree, do you think that in itself, that statement is healthy? Because I think it could be both.
Actually, you want to go ahead. Well, I'll just say real quick. I don't know. I feel like, in a sense, ever since you brought that up to me, it actually, because there are things that we still disagree in, but sometimes I have to step back and trust God, right, through the process.
Yes.
And let's say if there's a decision he makes and I totally disagree with that decision, and even though I feel like, you know, maybe our disagreement is, no, if you make that decision, you do that, there's going to be consequences. And I'm already looking beyond like, oh, it can be, this can happen or that can happen, right? That can affect us as a whole.
Right.
And it's happened, you know, a couple of times where we've disagreed on decisions and we went ahead and did what we chose to do.
Right.
And there was a consequence, you know, where the other person was right, but we did it anyways. But that's where I feel like you have to step back and trust God through the process. And even if it's going to, and be prepared for what happens regarding that decision. So if it does go the wrong way, you're at least ready because you've already, okay, Lord, I'm going to, you know, give this to you and trust you through the process and just help me and give me wisdom on how to get us through the end result of what that decision brought to the family.
Right.
So I don't know if that makes sense. So it could be, I think it's a good thing, but I think it's what you do with it if you disagree. That, you know, like in our situation, you know, there's been decisions that both of us have made and it backfired. But, you know, with me, I would step back when I'm in, you know, and do that. I would say, okay, Lord, I'm going to trust you. I don't like it. I already see, you know, the future of that decision and it's going to affect us. But now I'm going to focus on, you know, trusting you. And if it happens, then at least I'm ready.
Right.
So that's the way I think through it. I don't know. You want to go ahead and you were going to say something?
No, I was going to say, as a single person, I don't really think it's a bad thing. I think for me, I care more about being understood than I would for someone agreeing with me. But I think in a marriage, there are some of those, like, what do you call it? Like, not untouchables, but like those certain foundations that there has to be agreement. Absolutes. There has to be absolutes. But as a single person, like having a discussion with mom, I care the most that she understands what I'm coming from, understands where I'm coming from, but I don't care if she agrees with me. I just want to know. I just want to know that she knows what I'm trying to say.
Right.
But I don't think it's wrong.
Yeah. How about you, Mary? What do you think about agree to disagree, if it's good or bad?
Like she said, in a marriage, I think there's some things that you just can't get away with or shouldn't disagree. Parenting is a big one. So if one parent decides we're not going to use corporal punishment, so it has to be agreed, because then the other parent does it.
Yeah, I
and
see
then
that.
we can't agree to disagree on stuff like that.
Sure.
We can't agree to disagree on, okay, every Friday night he's going to go out with the guys. No, I'm sorry, that's not the way that this life works. So it has to be something that we both agree to. And the little things like, okay, doing the laundry. Oh, I agree to disagree. Yeah, do the laundry, don't do the laundry. Yeah, somebody else will get the laundry done. So those are the things that are okay. But every individual is different. So I think it's okay. And I love what Ruthie said, where I just want you to know that whether you agree with me or not, I want you to know how I feel. And then that's it. And yeah, so that's what I think about agreeing to disagree. Yeah.
That's good. I didn't think about the kid parts and stuff, because that's so true. Being
Yeah.
on the same page.
For me, I think that the filter to use on that, of course, on there, like you guys said already about there's certain absolutes. I get that part. If it's just something else, I know sometimes it could be where you're picking your battles. Is this something that I want to push the envelope on just to turn around and be right in this conversation? I think the motive has something to do with it, and I think the outcome has something to do with it. If let's just say me and Ida we're disagreeing on something, we can't make any progress, and it's not a yes, it's not a no, but we're just going to agree to disagree and sweep it under the carpet. But it's something that keeps popping up, and we just keep sweeping under the carpet. Then that's where I think it's wrong.
Yeah.
I think at some point it has to get dealt with, whatever the topic is, because to continually sweep it under the carpet to quote unquote agree to disagree, I think it's just a lack of responsibility to finish that conversation. So that's where I think that it could be wrong. But I think on the other side, like I was mentioning earlier, to pick your battles. If it's something not so major and you agree to disagree, then I think that's actually okay. I think that's healthy. But the toxic side is where you don't want to deal with something because you want to just say, we don't agree, or agree to disagree and keep sweeping it under the carpet.
I think in a situation like that, though, giving each other just a little space to maybe think about what was talked about, because a lot of the times the person that disagreed will come back and say, you know what, you were right. And I agree with you. I just needed to take a step back and think about and process what we talked about. And I realized, you know what, I agree with you now. I was wrong. And I've actually done that where we disagreed, or we'd get in a discussion that we didn't agree on, and I just we weren't getting anywhere in that conversation. So we gave each other space, and either I or he would come back and say, hey, you know what, I was thinking about it, and you know what, you were right and I was wrong, and stuff like that. So that would be one way to handle it. Instead of sweeping it under the carpet, give each other space, time. Don't let it go longer than 24 hours. Right. Think about it, really think about it, and even ask God for guidance and what was talked about, and then come back together and, talk about it again, because I really believe, there's always, you may think your spouse is wrong or whoever you're having that conversation with, but a lot of the times, it goes back to your pride again and the process, we're there to help each other, not to hurt each other. Right. And to really take in consideration what our conversations and what this topic is. And, anyways.
And you said sweeping under the carpet. I wanted to touch on that because that's how arguments get started. Toxic arguments get started.
Yeah.
When we decide, I'm not going to deal with it, we're sweeping it under the carpet. And then what happens one day, something so small that you didn't answer the text or whatever, and then it turns into this full-blown argument. And I don't know if you guys have heard this on TikTok, which I thought was I think that's where I heard it. It's so interesting. They said, when arguing, why are people yelling at each other? Did you guys hear
I
that?
think I did.
Where the heart is so far away from each other. We feel so far away from each other that we're yelling at each other.
That's so
but
good.
that's what happens in arguments, toxic arguments, that you are so far from that person. It's not physically, but your hearts are so distant from each other that you start yelling and these arguments get really heated, but because that's how far you are away from each other.
That's
That you're
good.
actually in the
Yeah.
same room or in the same space.
Wow.
But that's what happens when we keep sweeping it under the carpet, when we don't deal with these issues. So I thought that was important that we say that, because an argument or disagreement can be healthy, but it'll turn into an argument when we stuff it. We just keep taking it, just keep taking it. Because all we're really doing is waiting for that one moment so we can go off, and then we throw everything in their face. And that's not healthy, especially when there's children involved. You don't want the children to be hearing all that yelling.
And what was the other side of that TikTok thing that you were talking about? Do you remember?
The other side of it?
Yeah.
It's it was talking about how far the hearts are apart, but it's if you can calm down, you can see that really you're right there. You don't have to be yelling at each other because you're both there, you're present, but it was that anger that was in between you that keeps driving you apart.
And there
Well,
might be a heart. I'm sorry.
Well, the other part that I believe it's the same TikTok thing that I saw, but one of the things that they were saying that a lot of times when your hearts are so close, you could even whisper
Yes, oh my gosh.
because your hearts are so close. So that's the
Yes.
other side of the coin.
Yes, that you don't even have to yell. And that's so beautiful, yeah. These TikToks.
No, I was just gonna say it goes back to then you have to ask yourself, do you have a heart issue? Even towards that other person, or why are you,
Feeling like you're having
behaving
to
like
yell.
or feeling like you have to yell?
Yes.
And I think one other thing that I think would be good to highlight, because we're talking about being understood, is that we really need to make the effort to listen with our guard down and not try to use all these filters on what they're what they're trying to get caught up in their words. Because that's one thing, that phrase that me and my wife actually don't get caught up in my words, but hear my heart.
That's
We've
really good.
used that a lot, and I know that helps a lot of times. But trying to just be a good listener can cause a situation from being an argument to maybe a disagreement, and it almost waters it down more. So
Right.
it's not such a harsh thing to process because somebody's actually taking the time to listen.
I have a question before you guys end, because you use the phrase "pick your battles." What do you do as a person, whether it's in a marriage or just in general? What do you do with those battles you don't pick? Because thinking about it, I'm like, if over time, if you keep, it's not worth it. I'm not gonna pick at this one. Like, I'm just gonna let it go. But you hold on to it, then wouldn't those battles eventually turn into like a bigger war? Because you're like, I'm not gonna pick this battle. So what do you do with those battles you don't pick?
Actually, would you be able to give an example?
Like something, I can't think of anything on top of my head. It's just one of those things. Like, let's just say you have a disagreement with someone, and you're like, you know what, I could really go into this right now, but it's not worth it for me. Like, I have plans, I want to do something else, whatever. But you don't address it, and you're like, I'm just gonna let it go. But a lot of times we don't let it go. We just kind of bury it deep down or just ignore it. But then something happens again, where you're like, dang, man, and then you're like, it's not worth it. But then over time, you end up exploding on that person, because you're holding it in. But in the moment, it was so small. But what would you tell to someone who doesn't address those battles?
I'm going to let your mom go
Do you know
first.
what I mean? Do you
think
understand what my
Yeah,
question
I
is?
got
Okay, cool.
I was gonna use an analogy. It's not like Dad does this because he doesn't do it at all. But I'm gonna use it. No, you don't, because you're very he's very organized and to the T, clean,
so
everything.
that's nice.
Okay, so but let's just say if Dad would be throw his clothes on the floor and leave them there every day and never pick them up. Something simple like that. To me, to be honest with you, it's not worth my fight or my time. You know what I mean? It's like I got better things to do, better things. You know what I mean? I don't know. I've gotten to a place where there's there is little pet peeves of mine
Yeah.
that he does that I don't like, and I'm there's some that I do too that he doesn't like. I can even name a couple.
Which ones? No, just kidding.
Well, like
Just
but
kidding, just
actually, no.
kidding.
Well, here, let's go back. A good example that you actually handle really well, and I'm really like shocked, and it means a lot to me. I don't tell him this, but
But on the podcast, I will.
this used to be a really pet peeve of mine where he would come to me, and because he does his banking like twice, sometimes 3 times a day.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So anytime I go use the debit card, I have to text him the amounts so he can go and make sure there's nobody's, hacking in. He likes to make
Right.
sure everything's perfect. Well, I never like that. I'm like, because I don't. It's sometimes I go 2, 3, 4 stores.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll forget a receipt, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
But it got to the point
That's
where
why I do it 3 times a day.
He actually stopped asking, like getting on me when I stopped texting him. And because before he used to get on me about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, here we go again, one of those things. But it's like now he doesn't do that, and I don't know. I actually would love to ask him, what made you stop? And I think it kind of goes
It's
back
just
to
checking the bank 3 times a day.
but it's also, I think, too, goes back to choose your battles. I think he's getting to the place, and I'm getting to the place where over the littlest, because I told him, I said, if you think about in a marriage, most of the arguments and disagreements sometimes are over the littlest things that
The
reoccur
tiniest things,
over and over again. And I got to the point where I'm done. No, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired of the littlest things. But what I do is I don't dust them under the carpet. I actually give them to God. I know it's crazy,
Okay, you're getting
but
somewhere.
but it gets to the point where when I realize that, Lord, this is small. Why am I going to get angry over it? And sometimes the Lord will even show me why sometimes things are, the littlest things are happening. So I tell myself, Ida, is it worth your energy and your time to argue about this or even bring it up? And I'll tell myself, no, it's not. And then so I say, okay, Lord, I'm going to give this to you. I'm going to give this to you, and I'm not going to let it get to me. I let it go, and I go on. And sometimes I'll be the type, like if something's on the floor, then I'll just pick it up. It's not a big deal. And I'll just put it where it belongs, So to me, I give everything to God. The truth. I have to give it to him because me personally, I get tired. Because we've argued many times. We have our fights, our arguments. And I'm getting to the point where I'm 53 years old. I told him, I said, I'm going to be, I'm 53 years
Sound
old.
like Dad.
And I said, I don't want to be doing this up until I'm 60 or 70 because you're taking my joy away. So I'm choosing not to let you take my joy away. So I'm going to let it go. I'm going to let it go and give it to God. Because really, it's not worth, fighting over, decisions that I'm going to argue with or decide are big decisions that are going to impact us as a family.
Right.
Those I'm not going to dust under the rug. I'm not going to, I'll give it to God if somehow we don't agree, I'm going to have to, okay, then you know what? This is what I'm going to do. Lord, now you deal with it. I've done my part. I need you now to step in, and you're going to have to speak to him, you know? Vice versa, I believe he does the same thing, because I know we've had conversations where he had to give it to God and let God speak to me.
Right.
And God would speak to me and share, I would say, okay, I was wrong, and I shouldn't have done this or that. But all in all, little battles, choose your battles, and really, honestly, don't dwell on them. Give them to God, let it go. And if it's something because he leaves a seat up on the toilet, go put it down. Yeah. Just now be alert. Just, he left. Oops, sorry. Phone fell. The seat. Now I'm using my hands
She's
to talk.
putting it down.
Put the seat down. Don't make a big deal about it, right?
But it's much easier said than done
Yeah.
to say, give it to God. Because someone who's listening could be like, well, yeah, you can say that, but what does that look like?
It's a choice.
Yeah.
It's a choice. And
I
you know
know,
what?
I know it's a choice. For you,
Start-
it's different.
Focus
I'm
on
sure.
today. Just focus
Yeah.
on today. Don't focus on what happened yesterday because he left the seat up yesterday.
Yes.
Focus on today.
I think you're still holding on to something.
This is a therapeutic episode.
Take notes, Dad. No, but for someone who that doesn't come as natural to them or as easy, is there a practical way that they could quote unquote give it to God, or do you know what I mean, or let that go?
So go ahead, Tony.
Go ahead.
Me? Okay. So this is what I think, Ruthie. If it's, and this is just in general, this isn't like in a relationship, husband, wife, daughter, child. This is just in general. Everybody's going through something. Every one of us is going through something, whatever it is. Some of us left our house without eating. Some of us left our house with a headache. Some of us, we're just going through something. So if somebody, for me, what it means pick your battles is, I go to the grocery store and the cashier is really nasty to me and she tells me off or whatever. My response, I have a choice at that point. I can respond at her level, or I can pick my battle and say, she's going through something. This isn't me.
Right.
This isn't my issue.
Right.
So I can walk away, give it to God, walk away and let her deal with that. But when I choose to take it on, now that's something that I brought on to myself. I said, you know what? Her issue, whatever she was going through, I make it all about me. It
Oh,
had
take it
nothing to
personal.
do with
Right.
me. Yeah. So that's what picking your battles means to me. Even in a conversation with your boss. Your boss comes in and he's like, you didn't do this, da, 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 da. But every other day he was cool with me. Now today he's, you know what? This has nothing to do with me. It has nothing even to do with the productivity of the work. He's going through something. I have a choice. Do I take it on and say, you know what? I make this my issue. Now I'm going to get angry. Now I'm going to meet him where he's at. Or do I just let it go?
Yeah.
Those are picking your battles. Now, there's some things that we can't, like, we'll say, I'm picking my battles. Are you really picking your battles if you're still thinking about it next week?
Right,
No, you didn't
exactly.
pick your battles. You decided to take on whatever chaos was going on around you and you made it personal. So picking your battles is something that you have awareness, like, this has nothing to do with me. Like, now, if it bugs you, this is how I see it. If my sister said, you lied about that, da, 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 da. And I was like, no, I didn't. And I walk away. I'm like, oh, I did have a problem with this before. I did tend to do this, or I did. Now it's like I check myself. But did I do it this time? No. And I've become a better person since then. So then I was like, then you let it go. You do think about it because it's like, oh man, this rubbed me the wrong way because it's something I used to do.
Right.
But you choose to let it go, even if it's little later on, not right there in the moment. You choose to let it go. So that's how I choose my battles. And I don't know if that helps, but that's how I do it.
I literally am picturing like a conveyor belt. And as like a woman at a grocery store gives you a dirty look, it's like you see that backpack and you can easily put it on, but instead you leave it on the belt to just go away.
Keep going. Yeah.
And so the way you're saying it, just, I don't know why that picture came in my head. I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. So it's nothing until you pick it up and put it on. Is it something that you're going to have to like give to God?
Engage
Yeah.
in,
Yeah, like you don't have to give something to God that you didn't pick up in the first place.
Exactly.
I get
Yes.
it.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I painted a picture,
Yeah.
Tony. Thank you.
We have an artist in the house.
No, that makes so much sense. Yeah.
Okay. So do not pick up the backpack if it doesn't belong to you. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up with that. And arguments, if we change the wording and say, you know what, I'm having a disagreement as opposed to an argument, it will never sound toxic and it won't turn into something toxic. And it's okay to communicate, and it's okay to not understand where the other individual is coming, but it's not okay to walk away and say, you're wrong, I'm right. No, because that's a lot of pride. So at the end of the day, be kind, love one another, be at that place to where you can understand each other. Thank you so much, and we can't wait to speak to you again next week.